mandates from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
Welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.tv. Thank you for joining me this evening. We're going to dive into some of the foreign relations here, probably towards the end of the first half. Going to kind of focus on the election and also some stuff that came out of the Intercept, which Ron Paul covered, which we'll get into the Ron Paul Liberty report pretty quick here. But we are facing threats, some of which our government has helped make a bigger threat by our actions overseas. We hold some responsibility, but we've also seen a mechanism put in place called this voting. And we're never getting a better result. It doesn't matter what side you pick. We go back and forth. Even though we make strides in some civil issues, we don't truly win, because in the long run, your rights get taken away. Those are civil rights. People don't understand the whole, your natural rights or constitutional, the Bill of Rights. You have to understand it in a way where you can take a step back and look where we have gotten. People think you have a right not to be offended. But that means that things you do that you don't even think are offensive might offend someone. It becomes a nitpicking contest on what offends me, what offends you. Let's fight back and forth, divide and conquer. Another thing government has also done, which again came some emails that Intercept covered, and Ron Paul Liberty Report covered this too, which I'll get ready to play here. But they talk about homegrown terror, and we'll talk a little bit more about. I'll go ahead and play this Ron Paul Liberty Report, and it's titled FBI Comes Clean on Homegrown Terror.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams. And Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Good. I'd like to go over something we found on the internet as a report, actually from the FBI, that has been a secret report. And Intercept picked it up and reported on it. It's from 2012, so it wasn't something they just reported, but it's been evidently released by the FBI, but it sort of makes some of our points, and the American people haven't heard much about it. But just the title of this report will give our viewers a big hint on what this is about. It says, U.S. military operations are the biggest motivation for homegrown terrorists. FBI study shows. You'd think this would be big news, but evidently they almost like deliberately, withheld it, and the politicians didn't want it because the politicians, Republicans and Democrats, feared that it would undermine this bipartisan support for our policies in the Middle East, which is perpetual war and this ongoing war in Afghanistan that we've talked about for 15 years. But I consider this very significant. The information is out there. Even we can find stuff in the CIA reports that a few honest people will tell us, watch out because you're not hearing the truth. You're hearing one side of it designed to perpetuate a policy that I think most Americans would disagree with.
Yeah, and this is a report that the Intercept, as you say, published today, and they apparently had a peek at this secret FBI. It's the FBI Counterterrorism Division that did a report on what motivates people to terrorism. And it's really, what's shocking is that it's not shocking. It's something that, you've been saying and many have been saying for quite some time. It's our foreign policy. Yeah,
and, it's people list it very, very high. It's interesting that 70% of the American people now say they don't trust the government, and yet they trust the government and their propaganda machine on how they should react to the threat of terrorism. It's not like it's totally benign, but it's nothing what they, portray it to be. I think you have some statistics available to show, just how many of these cases are going on. And there's not that many cases of homegrown terrorism. When you hear about it and they play it up, I mean, you can't say we ignore it, but if it's as simple as lack of reporting, I think that, people ought to know that because it would affect foreign policy. I've always said that as long as the American people believe the lies of our government, that they want to kill us and they want to do harm, whether it's here or elsewhere, it's because we're free and prosperous and not because of our policies. We can't solve these problems. We'd like to take a look at that chart on how many cases have occurred.
And I think the chart tells us two things. First of all, the vast majority of people targeting the U.S. and U.S. interests are Americans. Are American. On the left side, you see up to 7 in 2009, 8 in 2010. But the other thing that struck me, Dr. Paul, when I looked at this chart is how few attacks there are.
Yes, let me show you. On the right-hand side, it shows you how much per year by foreigners. Boy, it's dipping down. It went from five or so down to 1. And, of course, domestically, there's an epidemic. It's all the way up to 8. And putting this in perspective, yeah. I mean, of course, you don't want any. But what if the cause really is our foreign policy? It looks like we could eliminate that. But, of course, a lot of people die. Americans die overseas. I think back to our friend Robert Pape, who wrote the book Dying to Win, and he put that out in 2005. And he's the one that explained this. He's the one that converted me into downplaying the emphasis on radical Islam. Mm-hmm. Yes, there are radicals in Islam, and they're jihadists, and they will kill us, and they have had suicide terrorists. And, of course, it happened in Lebanon, under Reagan. And yet he showed that it wasn't religiously motivated. He claimed that the number one cause, and he's the person who has studied this in most detail, the number one cause goes along with what this report says. It has to do with our foreign policy and not religion.
Yeah. And this 2012 report coincides with a 2011 FBI study that was released, and we've seen a good part of it, and it actually corroborates what the 2012 report concludes. And it's very simple. The increase in terrorism, which wasn't a big increase we saw, is not due to recruitment by foreign violent extremists, but by self-selection. So people aren't logging on to jihadist websites to learn how to be jihadists. They're first getting motivated by what U.S. foreign policy is doing overseas. And here's something from the John Mueller was quoted in the Intercept piece, and he is a terrorism expert at Ohio State University. And this, I think, actually should make us worried because it shows how vulnerable our foreign policy makes us. And here's what he said. People read news reports about atrocities and become angry. It doesn't have to be information from jihadist websites that angers someone. It could be a New York Times report on a drone strike that kills a bunch of civilians in Afghanistan.
That's right. I want to follow up with one point about Pape. He said it wasn't religion, that motivates these people. It was occupation, yes. And that's why they would be willing to give up their lives to make this point because foreigners occupied their territory. And he said that the most suicide terrorism occurred in Sri Lanka, and there they were. I don't think it's occurring now as it was, but back then it was, and they were motivated, and they were secular, and they were Hindu historically, and they were communists, but they were really motivated to do it. And yet today, people still believe, it's strictly. Radical Islam that does it, and not not our policy. But you say, well, why do they want to do it? Bush says, and the official explanation is they do it because they're jealous of us because we're free and prosperous, and that's what I say. As long as we believe that, nothing is going to happen. But to further try to understand this. Do they have a justification? I mean, we're doing good. We're teaching them democracy and have elections and, all that stuff. But there have been, in the last 15 years, since we've been involved in Afghanistan, the 15-year war that we've talked about frequently, 26,000 civilians have been killed. But that was not due to terrorism. That was due to collateral damage. But do you think those people know the difference when a bomb falls out of the sky and hits an innocent civilian population and people die? But if you add up everybody that died since we've invaded Afghanistan, the military people that died, the children that died from no health care and all this, the estimate is 500,000 Afghanis died. And this isn't even talking yet about Iraq. So I think that this is such a crucial issue. This is why I thought this was an important point, because nobody will pay attention to this and talk about it because it ruins the bipartisan foreign policy has been going on. I keep thinking, about the presidential election and, a Republican Congress opposing, a Democrat president. Will they really stand up to the president on foreign policy? They're not going to do this because this is what they believe in. They believe in occupation and they believe in imperialism. They believe in this stuff, and there has to be an enemy. And there's nobody really doing a very good job. The third parties are doing better than the other two of pointing out that we should change our foreign policy, and not participate in this demagoguing.
This is kind of a difficult episode to do because we're trying to put forth a few seemingly contradictory things. One, we're saying that, hey, homegrown terrorism in the U.S. is not as bad as the media wants us to believe. It's an overreaction. But on the other hand, we're saying there is such a thing as homegrown terrorism. There is such a thing as blowback. It can get a lot worse, and our policies themselves are going to make it a lot worse. So it's difficult to put those two together, but it's kind of a warning.
Right. I want to make a slight challenge to the article we read because we respect the people who did the reporting on that. I think they used the word, and I think I'm saying this correctly, that there would be new insight. In a way, I understand a new insight where the American people are going to hear something, but really it's not brand new. It's suppressed interpretation of what's going on, and it's been there. It's been available to us, and yet so far we just do more of the same. It just seems like the worse things get over there, the more troops we send. Philosophically, it's not a whole lot different of what we were doing in the 60s. You know, the more failures we had militarily, the more troops we had to send until finally we had to admit the failure. And there was a time when we thought we would extricate ourselves from the Middle East in Iraq and Afghanistan with the current president, but he's putting them all back in there again. So policies haven't changed at all.
And, you know, you have to wonder, why is the U.S. doing things that will encourage more terrorism against the United States? And that's exactly what they're doing. And it's not just you saying this. It's not just the radicals saying this or conspiracy theorists. There's a 2006 National Intelligence Estimate, the collective work of our entire intelligence community, however many tens of billions of dollars they spend a year. And here's what they said in 2006. The American invasion of Iraq helped spawn a new generation of Islamic radicalism.
Yeah.
You know, an invasion based on a lie, an invasion that was murderous to the people of Iraq, that has had no good outcome. And not only did it ruin the country, it's now making us so much less safe.
You know, and it is always risky trying to figure out the position of the people who perpetuate this policy, you know, what their motivations are. Are they in total denial? They sort of know what's going on, but we can't do it because we have these interests over there. Or are they just totally ignorant and they fall into the trap? A lot of members of Congress, I think, fell into the trap of listening to the experts to come and give them their secretive reports, you know, the CIA agent and all these secret hearings and build up the support by the members of Congress. They do it all the time. But it's hard to believe, though, that the people who are really in leadership, when you read behind the scenes and how Hillary actually, you know, described this stuff, you know, when she was talking about foreign policy, they knew exactly what they were doing. But the people who go along, you know, it's sort of like you've made the point of how the media goes along, you know, with it, too. Are they part of the conspiracy? Well, indirectly they are, but they're also people who aren't doing their homework.
Yeah, intellectually lazy. It's very easy just to parade the conventional wisdom around. You don't want to face your editor, especially when there are so few reporting jobs these days. Face your editor with something completely different and completely new.
But why is it they don't grab our stuff and put it out there? You know, they're not doing that. I do want to read one quote from one individual that was included in this study, and he was in the individual that was involved in the Towers bombing. I think it was the one in the 90s.
The Times Square, yeah.
Times Square. And he said many terrorists in the United States, this is the report, many terrorists in the United States have also been outspoken about their motivation for planning attacks. Shahzad, the failed Times Square bomber who was included in the FBI study, succinctly explained his own reasoning in court. So here he is. He's being tried on this. Mm-hmm. And I would have to assume he's probably in a position to tell the truth. He's not going to make how could he gain anything? If he was trying to save his life and something, he might lie or something. He says, I want to plead guilty 100 times because unless the United States pulls out of Afghanistan and Iraq until they stop drone strikes in Somalia, Pakistan, and Yemen, and stop attacking Muslim lands, we will attack the United States and be out to get them. Now, that is pretty blunt, but they'll say, you know, like they said to me, you mean you should take your directions from Osama bin Laden? Yeah. No, but you ought to take a hint. But they were still, even in this report, reported the three major reasons why people in that area, the ones who have killed a lot of Americans already, who would participate in something like 9/11 and have, they listed, bin Laden listed, and they said, it was the unfairness and favoritism toward the Palestinians. It was the support of bad dictators in those lands over there, like in Saudi Arabia, and constant bombing and killing of Muslim people. And it wasn't like 9/11 occurred before we started killing a lot of Muslims, but that's considered un-American to say that. But why is it un-American and unpatriotic to try to tell the people the truth, to do something to improve our country and improve the chances of having peace and prosperity? But they want to turn that around because they can't stand to bear the truth. Truth is treason in an empire lies, and we have an empire lies, and they lie and they do and say anything they want. This is part of it, except we had a glimpse of the truth, both from the CIA report and the FBI report. And I really believe that if more people knew about this, they would say enough is enough. I'm optimistic that when the people know, they're going to come down on our side for this. But superficially, they like a strong person and they get frightened. People have to be frightened. They have to be scared. And that's why they want a strong leader to take care of us and, and protect us and give us perfect safety, which is not the role of the government. The government is to work toward perfection and delivering liberty to individuals, not for perfect safety. That doesn't mean you don't have a national defense, but you use the defense if you're being attacked, but not using the military to go out and run an empire.
And just think, though, if the U.S. actually did something to address the real cause of terrorism, that would be a big blow to the $1 trillion national security state yearly budget. So what do they do instead? Obama has a countering violent extremism program. Millions and millions of dollars are put into it. But as we read in this article that we looked at this morning, it totally makes no sense when you look at the actual FBI report. This is what they want to do. They want to steer targets toward, quote, effective approaches to activism and political social impact. And it's sort of gobbledygook, and it says nothing about policy. And the two candidates you mentioned, their two approaches are no more encouraging than Obama's approach. Hillary wants more secret war. She's already said that. No boots on the ground, but more special forces, more CIA. That's going to cause more terrorism. Trump wants to bomb the blank out of them. And he also wants to screen Muslims. That neither of the two of those will address the real problem.
Well, even Trump is severely critical of our current policy because even though we're involved and he's not a non-interventionist, he said, "Why do we let them know what we're going to do? We have to do it in secret, surprise them, and boom, 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 and get them." It's a big difference. Their use of government force for special interests, whether it's oil industry, remaking the Middle East, the military-industrial complex, satisfying the neocon philosophers who probably sincerely believe that they can make it a better world, which is pretty doubtful that anybody could believe that. But when you look at it, it's just a shame. But I wanted to, the point I wanted to make earlier is the American people, when they get the information, like the American people and the Congress hesitated to endorse bombing of Assad. Yeah. And yet we're back, they've been angling to do that again, and it looks like eventually it will happen, except we're in a more dangerous world now. I mean, we're threatening to still bomb Assad. At the same time, the Russians are really in there. The Russians come in and save their ally, and they're saying, you better not do it. And they have moved their missiles in there. But, they probably have talked about this in the campaign, but I haven't heard a clear, real discussion about, the seriousness of our conflict and the war with Russia. Yes, Trump has a different position than Hillary, but have they talked about just getting out of there and bringing the troops home? No, and always, once again, even if they might have a softer position in one area, there's not a softer position because politically they believe that we have to be radically opposed and should be really tough on radical Islam jihadists because they don't believe anything we're talking about. It's all radical Islamic jihadists, which we precipitate. I think we have jihadists. We have warmongering religious people in all religions. And what motivates the support for killing 26,000 civilians? Because a lot of religious people, believers in this country, have been strong supporters of the Bush wars, and they haven't spoken out, against these wars. So it's really tragic because it's a tough job getting the truth out, but I really believe that if the American people had more access to the truth, they would take a position which says that, if we want to have an influence around the world, why don't we set a better standard? Maybe people would want to copy our economic system and our protection of civil liberties and our relationship with other countries, because it would be so different if we accepted this policy of not using violence and force to have our way.
That's why we hope our friends that are watching the show will share the show with your friends and relatives and pass it around. Maybe the word will get out.
Very good. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. And as I'm sure you can tell, I consider this report that we've been talking about from the FBI as very, very significant. And that it would be great for a lot more people to realize that the CIA and the FBI have made reports very similar to what we have been talking about, but they have been silenced and kept away. Here it took, nearly 10 years for some of these reports to become known. But the information is out there and common sense is out there. American traditions are out there and they're all being challenged. Unfortunately, I'm not very optimistic that immediately after this campaign is over, regardless of what happens, that immediately we're going to be coming home with our troops and the war's ended. That's what we need to do. And I don't think America will be in greater danger. I think we will be much safer. We certainly will be a lot more prosperous. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.
Ron Paul Liberty Report, Ron Paul Liberty Report on YouTube. Subscribe and check out ronpaullibertyreport.com. And when we see our actions abroad and how it just, this is longer than World War II, okay? We stay in these conflicts and we pull some troops out, and then we wonder why civil war and militias and terrorist groups start coming in. Well, because you're moving out. We destabilize the region and we leave. And the issue becomes, well, then do you nation build? Well, you can't nation build. I think one thing that needs to be understood when you leave, that you cannot leave a defenseless population. And so people go, well, you're just going to arm terrorists then. Well, the thing is that the terrorists got armed, but you have defenseless populations. Now we've helped with the Kurds and, some of these other questionable rebel groups, as you call them, that turned into ISIS all of a sudden. But the Kurds have been one that, we've helped out. But what about when we pull out of places? It becomes one of those catch-22s that you can't really fix that. You've created a vacuum. And what we've also seen is this has happened to countries that, even though they were under a dictatorship, they were bustling, communities. They always want to show you, pictures of the desert and people struggling in mud huts or something. It's not that way. And the pictures are out there where you can see a lot of these Middle Eastern countries that we've gone into before and after. And we've totally, destroyed cities. There's no just rebuild overnight. You've knocked out all infrastructure, materials. In Libya, they took out the man-made river that was allowing them to produce their own food. And if I remember right, that was NATO that did that. But now we've also had some other issues. With all this shadowy backing of the Ukrainian coup and having that tension on Russia's doorstep, we're also dealing with Russia in the Middle East. And this out of Zero Hedge, Russian government officials told to immediately bring back children studying abroad. Says here in Europe, when it gets serious, you have to lie, at least if you're an unelected bureaucrat like Jean-Claude Juncker. In Russia, however, when it gets serious, attention immediately turns to the children. Which is why we read a report in Russian website Znak published Tuesday, according to which Russian state officials and government workers were told to bring back their children studying abroad immediately, even if it means cutting their education short and not waiting until the end of the school year, and re-enroll them in Russian schools. With some concern, the article adds that if the parents of these same officials also live abroad for some reason and have not lost their Russian citizenship, should also be returned to the motherland. Znak cited 5 administration officials as the source of the report. The recommendation applies to all, from the administration staff to regional administrators to lawmakers of all levels. Employees of public corporations are also subject to the ordinance. One of the sources said that anyone who fails to act will find such non-compliance to be a complicating factor in the furtherance of their public sector career. He added that he was aware of several such cases in recent months. It appears that the underlying reason behind the command is that the Russian government is concerned about the optics of having children of the Russian political elite being educated abroad while their parents appear on television talking about patriotism and being surrounded by enemies. While we doubt the impacted children will be happy by this development, some of the more patriotic locals, if unimpacted, are delighted, such as Batoli Ivanov, a political scientist who believes that the measure to return children of officials from studying abroad is long overdue. According to Ivanov, the education of children of the Russian elite abroad is subject to constant ridicule and derision against the ruling regime. People note the hypocrisy of having a centralized state and cultivating patriotism and anti-Western sentiment while children of government workers study abroad. You cannot serve 2 gods, one must choose. Now, you can read the rest of that article at Zero Hedge, but I think there's a little bit more to this. We have the tensions between the U.S. and Russia and Syria. We've had Russia basically institute their own no-fly zone when it comes to targeting any of Syria's troops. And this came out of UK News, Yahoo, uk.news, yahoo.com. Maybe. Did it just freeze on me? RAF given green light to shoot down hostile Russian jets in Syria. As relations between the West and Russia steadily deteriorate, Russian Air Force or Royal Air Force pilots have been given the go-ahead to shoot down Russian military jets when flying missions over Syria and Iraq, if they are endangered by them. The development comes with warnings that the UK and Russia are now one step closer to being at war. Royal Air Force Tornado pilots have been instructed to avoid contact with the Russian aircraft while engaged in missions for Operation Shatter. The code name for the Royal Air Force is anti-ISIS work in Iraq and Syria, but their aircraft have been armed with air-to-air missiles, and the pilots have been given the green light to defend themselves if they are threatened by Russian pilots. The first thing a British pilot will do is try to avoid a situation where an air-to-air attack is likely to occur. You avoid an area if there is Russian activity. An unidentified source from the UK's Permanent Joint Headquarters told the Sunday Times. But if a pilot is fired on or believes he is about to be fired on, he can defend himself. We now have a situation where a single pilot, irrespective of nationality, can have a strategic impact on future events. The Royal Air Force Tornado aircraft will be armed with heat-seeking advanced short-range air-to-air missiles, also called AIM-132 missiles. These weapons, which cost 200,000 euros each, can reach triple the speed of sound and have a longer range than other air-to-air missiles, allowing Royal Air Force pilots to shoot down enemy aircraft without being targeted themselves. The Sunday Times report quoted a defense source as saying, up till now, Royal Air Force Tornadoes have been equipped with 500-pound satellite-guided bombs. There has been no or little air-to-air threat, but in the last week the situation has changed. We need to respond accordingly. We need to protect our pilots, but at the same time, said another source, we are taking a step closer to war. It will only take one plane to be shot down in an air-to-air battle, and the whole landscape will change. Russia and Syria, the move comes after Russia's entry into the civil war in Syria in support of President Bashar al-Assad government forces. The U.S. has branded Russia's involvement as fundamentally flawed, with the Kremlin facing accusations that it is ignoring IS fighters. According to a report in the Sunday Times, An appraisal carried out by UK defense officials said it took 6 days for Russia to strike any ISIS targets at all. Their airstrikes have included moderate opposition groups who have been fighting to defend their areas from ISIS. Among the targets hit were 3 field hospitals. And, I covered how a lot of these white hat organizations have been taken over by basically these terrorist groups, but kind of more of a propaganda type scheme. Now, and that was a journalist that was there in Aleppo. But sorry. Okay. When we look at the tensions growing, and then we look at what's going on here domestically, you have to say, hey, we are basically falling into a world war. And a lot of people don't really pay enough attention, but a lot of the players are right there. Soros being one of them. Soros groups have been linked to Ukraine. They've been linked to other organizations working throughout Europe. Soros here in the U.S. And believe me, there's other people that are playing that same hand. And I like to call them the uber rich or the ultra rich. The fourth class. You have your poverty level, middle class, and rich. Well, that's a kind of a fallacy that they put out there because they always forget the ultra rich, the uber rich, that fourth class. They are trying to take out the middle class. This is furtherment of what they're wanting to accomplish. Because by taking out the middle class, and not just the U.S., but in Europe, in a lot of countries, take out the middle class. You basically start the civil war between the poor and the new middle class, which you would consider rich, because the gap in between the poor and the middle class will be so big. Because the gap between the rich and the uber rich people, the ultra rich, the world over rich, a lot of the people that run central banks around the world. When you look at it, they will help the poor get free things from the rich. Because Now there's no middle class. There's no stepping stone. You don't have hope of getting out of the poor. You need your stuff. You just want your free stuff. Your food rations. Your clothing rations. You just need new stuff. You need food. You need clothing. You need a roof over your house. And that new middle class that you consider rich will be able to remain in that middle class as long as they give up a portion to the government and keep going along with the system. We've seen the system play out in other countries, but it basically will create a slave class. And we've seen this. But creating a, collapse in multiple countries to achieve that. And that's where their new world order will start to come into play. I'm going to cover a couple of things here more domestic. Give me a second here, guys. Okay. This one I've seen here domestically, and it's kind of a win. This from Reason.com from their hit and run blog section. Pre-dawn, no-knock SWAT raid for minor drug charge ruled unconstitutional. 2015 militarized raid resulted in fifth-degree drug possession. That's the lowest drug charge possible. A Hennepin County, Minnesota drug raid known as Emergency Services Unit conducted a pre-dawn no-knock raid on a house in Minneapolis. North Minneapolis, one morning in November 2015. They were looking for Walter Power, who they suspected of being a marijuana dealer. A search of the home they believed Power to be sleeping in. They brought a force of between 28 and 32 officers, most clad in riot gear and carrying rifles, accompanied by a sniper seated atop a ballistic engineered armored response vehicle, Bear vehicle. Why did law enforcement officials feel they needed to display a show of overwhelming force that would be intense even in a foreign occupied city? Because the primary resident of the house, Michael Delgado, was a registered gun owner with a license to carry. Convinced of the potential danger posed to officers when raiding a house with an armed occupant, Hennepin County District Judge Tanya Bransford signed off on the no-knock raid, but later told the Minneapolis Star Tribune that she did not know a platoon of up to 32 officers would be deployed to search the house, or that they throw flashbang grenades through the windows in addition to knocking down doors. The raid resulted in the arrest of Power, the suspected marijuana dealer, for fifth degree drug possession, the lowest possible drug charges on the books. Even this modest charge would be dropped after Judge Bransford declared the raid unconstitutional in a ruling last summer, arguing that Delgado and Power have been subject to unreasonable search and seizure in violation of the Fourth Amendment. Bransford wrote in her ruling that the types of militarized action used in the case seemed to be a matter of customary business practice, which she found troubling. Like most of the U.S., Hennepin County has increasingly relied on SWAT teams to serve warrants. According to the Star Tribune, its ESU deployed 71 times last year, which is more than double its annual usage from a decade prior. A 2014 study by the American Civil Liberties Union found that on a national basis, SWAT teams were only used for hostage, barricade, or active shooter scenarios in 7% of all deployments, while 62% of SWAT raids were to search for drugs. The executive director of the Minnesota Sheriff's Association, Jim Franklin, was quoted by the Star Tribune as saying of Bransford's ruling, "My question to her is, are you going to attend the dead cop's funeral?" Franklin's argument is essentially that without the use of such violent and destructive tactics, officers' lives would be at risk, but no-knock raids can and do result in the deaths of officers because few things will make even reasonable people turn violent, like a sudden and shocking attack on their home. In 2006, former reasoner Bradley Balco wrote about the case of Corey May, a Mississippi man who ended up on death row after shooting an officer entering his home during a no-knock raid. May would be released from prison on 2011 following a plea agreement to charges of manslaughter. And even though Indiana hasn't put a law against the no-knock raid thing, if they don't have a warrant and they try to come in your house, there is a law in Indiana that says even law enforcement illegally trying to enter your premises, definitely like breaking in the middle of the night without a warrant, you're protected. Now, there was one case that actually played out with that. But other than that, it's not something people are wanting to test. I don't think people are like, hey, I wish a cop would break into my house so I could hurt them. That's not what usually is going through people's mind. It's mostly, can people just mind their own damn business? Definitely when it becomes, there was that one no-knock raid in the middle of the night where they shot the dog in front of like somewhere between the age of 6 and 8, I think it was, child in the house, and it was all because the guy living there bought a joint. They go, well, he could have been a possible drug dealer. That's why we wanted to search his house. because a joint made him a drug dealer. And you're talking about traumatic events that these children are having to go through. We know the case of the flashbang landing in the child's bed and severely injuring the child. When, we were young, SWAT teams were, like the article said, used for hostage or, first responders, mass casualties, robberies. Um, what we are using them for now it's become sickening. But another thing, it's also become a military training. A lot of people don't realize another motive behind using SWAT. You think that every city's police department all around the country decided, hey, let's start using them for this. These are mass training that most of these law enforcement agencies get. And in return, they're getting officers trained in military tactics and ready for civil unrest. Now, we've been talking about the police state and the civil unrest for at least 10 years, if not more. But I think we're actually seeing that path now start to play out. We have the military vehicles on the streets now. We have the mass policing in most, not even quite major, even some of the medium-sized cities. It's even some smaller cities. They are rolling around in tanks, basically. Armored carriers, whatever you want to call them, but they're rolling around in military vehicles. And with the tensions domestically and the tensions in the foreign, sphere, something's coming. And, if they want maybe people to join up with the military, maybe create an economic collapse at the same time, civil unrest, people just want to get away from it all, get paid. A lot of these are just things that I've been, pondering. What's coming out of this? And I got a clip that I wanted to play from Christopher Green. It's a short one. It's not too long here. But he believes that there will be a civil war and economic collapse after the election. And I've actually heard this from multiple what I would consider reliable sources. When it comes to other alternative outlets, I always, take all of this, even, Christopher Green, it don't matter what outlet. You take everything with a grain of salt. I tend to play these people because they have had pretty good outcomes with things they have seen coming. Um, they use a lot of data and historic facts to back up what they cover. Now, some of them might not hold the same philosophy as I do, or you do. Some of them you might not trust, but a lot of the data is out there. It's not hard to find. Of course, use something more than just Google, as they keep narrowing your search results to what they want you to find. It's really not too hard to find out a lot of this, and whether it be alternative media, Ron Paul has spoke about it. These bubbles that they keep creating, the Federal Reserve, monetary policy. Peter Schiff's out there talking about it. All this is playing into what seems is a perfect storm. And I think that there's not a lot of people out there that have a high moral standard. Don't really hold any principles. I think that we have a society that's lost, which is helping, stoke this fire. But I think that is what is creating this perfect storm, and why I really don't want to see a economic collapse. Definitely in the state we're in now. And I don't want to see a dictatorial, I can't even speak today, sorry guys. Dictatorial type president, nor do I want some patriotic war hawk. And then you can have the mix in between. I just want to be able to focus on my career, my life, without intrusion from government. And I also want government not to provoke countries, not to go policing the world, but to worry about our defense and allow free trade. I should be able to trade with whoever I want. Well, we don't want you to take jobs away from American workers. Well, I'm an American worker. I'm trying to start a business. I'll buy what I can, always have domestic, built. But if you have a budget that doesn't allow to buy everything, I shouldn't be penalized for trying to seek cheaper means or products. Okay, I'm going to cue this up here.
Get our new 12-page executive summary from our partner, Swiss America, today. Click the link below. Again, get a free report on money, morality, and the machine. Has the American empire gone the way of Rome? All this easy, funny money, credit, quantitative easing into infinity, 0% interest rates. Is there any morality to the money system today? Again, click the link below right now from our partner Swiss America. Download Money, Morality, and the Machine, 12-page executive summary on Smith's Law in an Unethical, Overgoverned Age by Craig R. Smith. Click the link below right now or give them a call at 1-800-289-2646. That's 1-800-289-2646. Act now. Hey, everybody. I'm Christopher Green. You're tuning into AMTV Alternative Media Television. Hard-hitting and in your face. It is October 7, 2016, Friday, as we lead into round 2 of the debate on Sunday night. And Donald Trump needs to get tougher. Now, we were on the ground this week. Went out to Prescott Valley, Arizona. There were supposed to be 5,000 people. Turned out there was 15, 20,000 odd people on the ground. They were literally wrapped around the building. We did rolling interviews with people like Jeff DeWitt, COO of Trump's national campaign. We interviewed people like Sheriff Joe Arpaio, who kind of gave us a little shit, which was to be expected. People like U.S. Republican Congressman Trent Franks. And we all asked the same question to all of these individuals. Is Donald Trump going to go after Hillary Rodham Clinton on the email scandal, on Bill's sexual liaisons, on all of these things that some are saying, oh, you know, it's lowbrow to go out after the Clinton Foundation? It is? How is it lowbrow to go after a criminal organization that makes up the Clinton Foundation, which only donates like 10% of the total proceeds to actual charity, but instead just puts it into their own pockets? I mean, this is what has made Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton rich in the hundreds of millions of dollars. They don't create a real product. They don't do anything. It's just a pay-to-play scam. Put money in our pockets while Hillary Rodham Clinton is Secretary of the State, and she'll do what you want. Countries like Saudi Arabia, by the way, that treat women like shit. Yet she calls herself a feminist. It's important to know, folks, what happens after this election. And Donald Trump's got to get tough. I mean, if he doesn't go after any of these issues, then I think something smells of foul. She's going after all the lowbrow stuff. Sexism, birtherism, racism, all the isms, which make up these pre-planned questions asked by Lester Holt. And now, guess what? We've got Anderson Cooper. Isn't that great? The Clinton News Network will be asking the questions this round. You know, something I asked Jeff DeWitt and others, I said, you know, why does Trump even agree to do these mainstream media rigged debates? Why doesn't he just hold his own debate? So he's got to go after some of these issues. And he can still be presidential. He can still be friendly. He can still come across like he's got good temperament in these things. But he needs to punch her in the face, figuratively. And he needs to go on the attack. You know, Trump's handlers don't need to overmanage him. Donald Trump needs to be Donald Trump. That's what's worked thus far, the political incorrect card. Now, even with the 15, 20,000 people at this rally, again, it only held 5,000. What a comparison and contrast to what we get with Hillary Rodham Clinton, where like barely anybody shows up, and it's just basically her people that are there. I still think my original thesis holds true. Donald Trump, he's real. He's real. He's anti-establishment. He's doing a fantastic job. His energy is amazing. 70 years old, roughly, and the energy he's got, it is absolutely enthralling. The way he can hold an audience, the way that he can speak, the passion that he has. It's amazing. But people like me on the ground, I still think this election is rigged. I still think that the world globalist elite are positioning Donald Trump as America's catharsis because people are angry. One of the reasons he's gotten this far, and he surprised a lot of people. They co-opt the political incorrect card, and they use it to their advantage. He's the catharsis. The election comes down to a gnat's ass. It gets squeezed right at the very end, November 8th, as we're 30-plus days away. It's very, very close. And right at the end, they rig the tables the other way, Hillary Rodham Clinton. You know, if Hillary Clinton wasn't such a weak candidate, and again, all the polls, I don't believe them. I think they're rigged. I actually think she'd be 10 points ahead. I mean, if Hillary Clinton was actually a strong candidate, and she wasn't coughing every 5 seconds or barreling over into a freaking van, she'd be 10 points ahead. But she's not. She's actually a very, very weak candidate. This country is headed in the wrong direction. When we are on the street and we ask people, why Donald Trump? Why Donald Trump? To make America great again, to make America great again. What do you think is going to happen? Is the country in a bad place? World War II veterans, right? Regular Americans, John and Jane saying, you know what? There's going to be a civil war in this country. The country is divided. There's going to be a dollar collapse. There's going to be economic problems. This was the honest responses from people on the street. This is what they think is coming. I actually argue that Donald Trump might have more power if he loses the election and he moves off into the fringes as he's aligning with alternative media, Breitbart, InfoWars, AMTV, and others, because the country is splitting. This is a civil war of the mind, an intellectual civil war, a civil war on ideas, what founded the great constitutional republic and made America great, make America great again, and this new radical leftist Manchurian candidate ideology, bringing everybody here by the boatload illegally so they vote Hillary Rodham Clinton, and we become a socialist nation. In a nation that lacks any of the constitutional foundational principles that our founding fathers and many others shed blood for. This election is coming down, just like my original prediction, to a gnat's ass. Very, very convenient. Hillary's not even that strong of a candidate. And at the end of the day, it's the Electoral College that decides, not you, the voter. And again, Trump's America's catharsis. Oh, he's so close. And I hope I'm wrong about this. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Donald Trump wins. But I'll tell you this. If he doesn't go after Hillary Clinton on Sunday, a little bit on the attack, on the Clinton Foundation, on the email scandal, maybe he stays away from Bill. But if he doesn't say something, if he doesn't get a little stronger, something's afoul. I'd be watching for that on Sunday. Of course, I will be commenting extensively. Thank you for all your tremendous support, folks. Please support our sponsor. Click the link below. Visit Swiss America right now. All these things we talk about, civil war, dollar collapse, economic trouble ahead. Download a free 12-page executive summary right now. It's free. Educate yourself. I'm a big believer in education. Don't just put your head in the sand. And get this video out everywhere. Thank you again for your tremendous
AMTV on YouTube. Now, I don't support Trump. I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not a never Trumper either. I'm not anything. I just consider myself independent from anybody. There's not any candidate out there that has my vote. Nor do I think voting will solve anything. What I do believe is if you do have a right candidate, voting for that candidate could give freedom leverage. And that's the only hope I have for voting. I don't think that we're going to get freedom. You're still going to have to fight for freedom. But with the right candidate, yeah, you could get that leverage. But it's much more than that. It's a social construct of your community and the belief systems that your community, your city, your town holds. And I believe cities are one of the worst places anymore to raise children, because what I see more in the cities is a very, not only is it compacted more into a smaller area, but there is less true community. When you tend to see community, it's a small little gated association, little addition that's gated, or the rich people may have a community going on, but true community, with the nonviolent community, atmosphere tends to be very non-existent. Now, it's not true everywhere in every part of every city. It's a generalization, but you tend to see it more in the city and bigger cities. Um, Bigger cities, you can't know everybody. There's just too many people. Um, but there's still ways that there can be community. But again, it comes back to that social construct that you have within that community, where you're one, self-reliant, two, neighborly, and a tight enough community that you know who these people are around you, that you know who to ask for help. You know who you trust, who you might not have good feelings about because they might look creepy or creep you out somewhat. And again, when you have a tight community, others may feel that. You don't go attacking, I think you're a creep, with no evidence, but it says, hey, be aware. Don't be mean, don't be rude, because he just might be kind of a weird person or a weird woman. But be aware. And when community truly works together, you tend to not look for government options to solve problems. And that's what you tend to get. I'm here in Indiana, mostly red state, being Republican, but the cities tend to be Democratic. And again, it's the ideology on how government and society should be ran. And the sad thing is, when you look at the left, there's a lot of people that have came from socialists, communists, and eugenicists backgrounds, mentors, family, operations and organizations. And they tend to still be playing pretty big roles in fields that, when it was okay to have eugenics, these fields were openly using it. Now that we're not allowed to, the people that mentored and studied under this type of ideology are still able to put lots of money and resources into these same fields. And we don't question it because government says it's okay. Government shouldn't be determining what's okay to put in your body. That was the problem with the whole eugenics movement. Not that someone thought this is a good idea. It's that government sanctioned it, turning people sterile, testing stuff on them, giving them diseases. All of this was documented during this time in history. This was sanctioned, not by Nazi Germany, by our own government. Why government shouldn't be involved. in these domestic issues. They're not supposed to be in this manner. When government would get involved is when they find out about a doctor secretly sterilizing patients without them knowing and committing these atrocities, to step in and say, you are abridging people's rights and you will pay for it. Not to back it, to make it mandatory. And they want mandatory vaccinations. Now you have to have health care, which even if you're not through Obamacare itself or a state, if you're getting it from your company, more than likely they're not giving you a Cadillac, what they call the Cadillac insurance policy if you were getting it. And all of it slowly becoming the same plan. We are in a different country right now. We don't have to wait till after the election to realize this. Whether it be our domestic policies or our foreign policies. Economic, commercial, monetary policy, or our private lives. Whether it be allies or the people that our government says we should be against. We are going rapidly in the wrong direction, in every direction. And we have to find things that will, I wouldn't even say you would try to prevent it. I don't think there's any preventing, the direction. I don't think Trump or Hillary are really going to give you too much of a directional change. A lot of people think they're so different, but really, I think again they're just different shades. They're not too different. Give me a second here. My browser froze up here. Okay, I got back up here. Now, I had this out of Reason.com leaked Clinton emails reveal that even Democratic policy advisors worry a $15 federal minimum wage would cost jobs. For much of the Democratic primary campaign, Hillary Clinton said she supported raising federal minimum wage from its current $7.25 to $12 an hour. But over the course of a drawn-out race with rival Bernie Sanders, who supported a $15 federal minimum, Clinton shifted her position, eventually saying in April that she would sign a $15 minimum wage bill if given the opportunity. Clinton's shift on the issue mirrors the larger shift by the Democratic Party as a whole. On the most remarkable things about the move by Democrats to support a $15 an hour federal minimum wage has been how divorce the idea has been from economic expertise. Not only have conservative economists warned about the negative consequences of such a move, but some of the party's own leading policy voices have said that it is dangerous and would almost certainly result in a significant job loss. For example, former Obama administration economic advisor Alan Kruger, whose work has helped lay the foundation for liberal arguments that smaller hikes in the minimum wage would not result in a significant job loss, warned last year a New York Times op-ed that a $15 an hour minimum wage would likely result in severe economic consequences and that many areas of the country would not be able to absorb such a hike. Behind the scenes, it's been clear that much, maybe even most, of the liberal policy community is uncomfortable with the idea, even though many have refrained from public criticism. Even still, it is notable that Neera Tanden, the head of the Center for American Progress, cautioned the Clinton campaign last year about supporting a $15 an hour federal minimum wage. As Sean Higgins of the Washington Examiner reports on April 2015, email from Tanden to 4 senior Clinton staffers responding to a list of policy proposals states that substantially we have not supported $15. So we'll get a fair number of liberal economists who say it will lose jobs. The email was obtained through an illegal hack and published by WikiLeaks. It's worth taking a moment to put this in context. Tandem, a former Obama administration staffer, is the head of one of the largest and most powerful liberal policy institutions in Washington, and she is a leading figure for a top position in a Hillary Clinton administration. She's writing to a group of top Clinton campaign staffers, including Podesta, Clinton's campaign chairman, and a former president of the Center for American Progress himself, campaign manager Robbie Mook, and communication director Jennifer Pullman, all of whom with intimate knowledge of the liberal policy consequences. And not only does Tanden state that many liberal economists would object to $15 minimum wage because it would result in job loss, no one else on the thread appears to push back in any way. You can read the rest of that at reason.com. Give me a second here. Now, we've seen all these emails coming out. And even though I don't like Trump, I'm not a Trump supporter, what we are seeing with what's going on with the Clinton emails coming out of WikiLeaks, all the information, and what the mainstream media is not covering about it. Either this is the best reverse psychology on the population, or they really are trying to just keep Trump from getting the presidency. I don't think he is a complete insider when it comes to their plans. And I don't think he is a puppet, but I don't trust him or support him. But I'm also not a never Trumper. I'm not going to tell people what to vote for. I put my opinion out there. You do what you want. And I've made it clear my ideology when it comes to government and political offices. I want to see a move back to the Bill of Rights, back to the Constitution. Because I think if we can make it there, we can seek a more libertarian future. And I don't want to see some violent civil war or revolution, because I don't think people know what freedom is. I don't think people know what natural rights are. I don't think there's a large enough of the population. I might be wrong, but from what I've seen, I just don't think it's there. And what we could get out of a civil war or a revolution could be 10 times worse. But we could also get it out of a government that we keep voting for and not taking a stand and saying not until we get a candidate that respects every individual as an individual. We all have the same individual rights. You can't have more rights than I have because you were voted a politician. I want to cover this real quick from We Are Change. The Hillary Clinton media psychology operation explained.
Are not only going to talk about the amazing amount of collusion behind the mainstream media and Hillary Rodham Clinton, but we're going to be talking about the manufacturing of consent, the fabrication of support, the psychological operation that has been going on between the prostitutes of the horse stream media and the establishment. All the links will be in the description below, and what you're going to see it didn't shock me, to be honest. This is no surprise, but we have now the evidence and the proof of not only this grand collusion, but also everything has been confirmed with the new WikiLeaks Part 3 Podesta emails that have just been released moments ago. Now, of course, Hillary Clinton has just confirmed the authenticity of our Podesta emails release of her paid speeches experts. WikiLeaks just tweeted this out. So, yes, this has been confirmed by many different sources, including Hillary Clinton herself, that these emails, this new dump of information that is shocking, that if any rational American would look at it, be like, what the hell's happening in this country? Well, we're going to tell you. It has come out that Hillary Clinton secretly received debate questions in advance from CNN. Donna Brazile of CNN shared CNN town hall questions with Hillary Clinton's camp before the debate actually happened. These people are getting the inside scoop. They know what is going to be talked about. They know how to officially respond. WikiLeaks has also released how the New York Times was caught providing Bill Clinton questions before interviews. See, this is all scripted. There is no interview. There is no journalism. There's only PR for the rich and establishment because the prostitutes of the horseshoe media are bending it over and taking it up the wazoo, knowingly, willingly, not only destroying journalism, but destroying truth, destroying information, which is power amongst all of us. And the New York Times not only provided questions to the Clinton camp in advance, but they also gave Clinton veto power, which she used on stories to get rid of articles that she did not want published by the New York Times. This is ultimately the mainstream media, the fourth branch of the U.S. government that are supposed to hold everyone accountable, working for the status quo, working for the establishment, working for Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, there's videos of her just reading an outright script during interviews. Her campaign was given questions beforehand, this time from MSNBC, what a surprise there, and the script was passed around by literally 10 people before being approved. You could watch this video. You could watch this video right now, and you could see every single thing that Hillary Clinton said during an interview just being read off. This is all fake. This is all fabricated. This is all manufactured in a high-tech psychological operation where over 10 people
Hillary Clinton is expanding her
have to
efforts
look
to
over specific information, specific details that are being sent out to you. There's a reason there's so much control. Again, Hillary Clinton has the mainstream media in her pocket. She is the representation of the establishment. But the layers of hypocrisy that never get called out. Hillary Clinton is supposed to be the champion of the anti-bullying movement and harassment and says that Trump is helping the rise of harassment in school. Meanwhile, and again, mainstream media doesn't talk about this, Hillary Clinton even admitted that they pay trolls to troll people who are against her. One of the trolls said that he was aghast at what he saw. The trolls are speaking out saying how deplorable and evil this paid operation by Hillary Clinton, which she said before she spent $1 million on. Well, it just came out that they have spent $6 million on a professional troll army to go online and, again, manufacture consent, fabricate information, fabricate consent. And obviously, this is a very important psychological operation because they know how people work, and a lot of people work in groupthink that has been highly engineered by the top dollars paid for probably by Goldman Sachs and all the other amount of millions of dollars that she accumulated by selling her soul to the evil corporate establishment. Well, she actually is the evil corporate establishment, but she received all this money, and now she's using it to have the best psychological operation in this presidential race. And of course, she is just an outright liar. The emails also relieved how she promised bankers to stand against pot legalization. Again, these people are not only deplorable, not only utter hypocrites, not only have the mainstream media in their pockets, but they're also just horrible human beings. Bill Clinton's behavior pushed one female Clinton Foundation chief to near suicide by plunging her car into the ocean depth. You can see the emails that came out from WikiLeaks talking about how horrible Bill Clinton was and how he's causing people to cause suicide. There's a reason there's the email talking about Hillary Clinton in these WikiLeaks by Podesta saying that, I know she has begun to, quote, hate everyday Americans. She hates you. She despises you. Journalism is dead. It no longer exists. All we have is PR for the very few, paid for by the very top dollar of the corporate globalist establishment that is utterly represented by Hillary Clinton. And of course, you will not hear this anywhere on the mainstream media, obviously, because we just proved to you they're bought off, they're sold, they're totally controlled. They're the ones pushing the lies, the disinformation. They know how psychology works. They know that if they manufacture, that if they fabricate, they could psychologically trick people into saying, yeah, sure. Do you believe any of these polls when the mainstream media is so lockstep and barrel with Hillary Clinton? Do you believe any of these polls that the mainstream media releases? Do you believe anything that the mainstream media says? Let me know in the comment section below. And of course, vote with your damn dollar. We're being screwed over here at YouTube because YouTube, again, it's not only Reddit, it's not only Twitter, it's also YouTube, it's also Google, who are pushing for Hillary Clinton. It's not just the mainstream media. Every time we release a video talking bad about Hillary Clinton, it gets demonetized. Yeah. That means our operation gets hurt. That means our operation can't expand, can't continue, because we have no financial incentive to do so. We don't care about the financial incentive because we have you. If you go to patreon.com/wearechange and donate $1 just a month, it's just everyone just gave $1 a month, just voting with your dollar. We will take on these prostitutes and horse stream media dead on like we have for a number of years now, and we will not back down. Thank you again so much for watching. Subscribe. You're going to have a lot more information coming here your way on youtube.com/wearechange.
We Are Change on YouTube, wearechange.org. Subscribe on YouTube, check them out, wearechange.org. Now, when it comes to the media, they're never afraid to attack Donald Trump on the littlest things. They nitpick him crazier than hell, while they avoid, well, the Podesta emails kind of show you exactly why. There is documented coercion between her campaign and the media. I'm kind of worried either way. I'm worried about if Donald Trump gets into office. I'm worried about if Hillary gets in office. I think that if Donald manages to win, I think he's going to become paranoid and dictatorial, because I do think that there's a pretty decent number of elites that don't want him to be in that position. I think it's messing with their plans. But I'm also kind of worried about Hillary, definitely after so much backlash, of so much hate against it. And, you know, the whole thing about a civil war is not far off. Definitely if she wins. And somehow Trump becomes this, you know, alt leader that inspires something. I don't know. It just, there's that feeling. And then you have Hillary that now is nervous because, you know, people are on to the scheme. We have to amp it up. And if you don't think Hillary, even if she's fragile, isn't intellectually able or willing to amp something up, you might want to read her thesis. Just saying. we're at a catch-22. You don't really have that great of an option. And how I look at it, there really is no options on the table other than to worry about my personal life and my family and the people around me in my community, and to focus really at a local level. And I think when communities are strong, government becomes weaker. People talk about revolution, and what came out of our revolution was because the communities were stronger. Even the people that were not willing to fight didn't think the fighting even was a good idea. But they, in their own ways, worked against the British. Even the people that were in the British occupied areas. A lot of them might have claimed loyalty to the king, but it was a way to continue to live their lives no matter who was the, government, so that they could pass along messages. I was at the bar dropping off bottles or glasses, or, I heard them talking about this. That's what happened during the Civil War, or Revolutionary War. And yeah, it happened during the Civil War too. There's a lot of tension right now, and the ability for a civil war to come about, I think, is kind of becoming apparent. Definitely with the Black Lives Matter, other riots that have gone on, the Occupy Wall Street, Tea Party. There's so much division, so many separate groups, and being a part of the beginning of the modern day Tea Party movement, which actually started back when the first thought of getting Ron Paul to run for president. Let's campaign to get him to run, to throw his hat in the ring. And how many different type of people related to individual freedom. They had a belief in the Bill of Rights. To today, where I've seen some of them go towards, Bernie Sanders. Some of them go towards Donald Trump. Some of them going towards Hillary Clinton. And it amazes me because I go, none of this. And you have some towards Gary Johnson. I think maybe one or two to Jill Stein. But you look at it and go, none of this is what we said we believed in. None of these people are offering that. We're literally in such a desperate mode that we accept the candidates that get on stage and run. And that's really, really sad. The Tea Party had been hijacked. The Republican nomination was that whole primary, all the debates and the different people dropping out. One person I thought should have, if there's still Tea Parties, true Tea Parties out there, true people, even if you're a libertarian that believe, we need to get towards, a freer society. It's not going to happen overnight. You're not a dreamer. You're a realist, and you kind of have to live your life as a free person rather than expect government to change overnight. I thought maybe at least there would be a lot more support for Rand Paul. And, he's not Ron Paul. He doesn't inspire or have my trust the way Ron Paul did. But if we were really, truly serious about going, let's get the best principled candidate, I think you would have probably had to have went with Rand Paul. Go Ted Cruz. No, Rand Paul. But opinion, but even then, I wouldn't expect anything dramatic or drastic. It becomes one of those things that what he can get done will be very minimal. But again, it's one of those, feet in the door for freedom, which we haven't had that chance for a very long time. And without that chance, this ideology that socialism and, even whether it be national socialism or this global socialism, we are not headed to a place that is going to allow us to grow and prosper as individuals. Only small groups. That's what we're facing. The history books, at least at one time, pointed that out. But again, we keep rewriting history. Because people have this fallacy that they want to live out. They want their fallacy to be reality. And some of them, I believe, have truly gotten lost in their fallacy. They believe it to be true. People that were at one time intelligent enough to go, hey, I'm going to look at the facts, now have said it's all a conspiracy. At one time, I didn't mind being called a conspiracy theorist because I kind of took it as that, that little stamp of approval that I question things. But now, when I see a lot of these conspiracy theories that come out, they're all over the place. I mean, they are out there. And I've said this years ago, that there's going to become a time that these lies are going to build up to a point that you could come out and state all the facts. And the facts will be for people that truly question and research things. Will be kind of mind blown that they just come out with all these facts. But for a lot of the population, they'll be like, that's not the truth. They're hiding more. She's really an alien. And they're already saying that stuff. Oh my gosh. But really what it is a group of people that believe they are genetically or intellectually superior to others and have been able to live a life in somewhat of a bubble. And only certain things were introduced into that bubble at a young age. And something caused a lasting impression that even if they deep down feel that it's somewhat wrong, they have justified it. So we have to really question boldly, because when we look at everything that's happening, question, because even though I don't like Trump, it's pretty evident what they're doing in the media. And no matter what we get, it's going to be alarming. But I think with the power that is being shown to back Hillary, it's kind of alarming, should we say. Stay tuned here on UCY.tv. Great broadcast coming up after this. Don't forget to go to UCY.tv. Scroll down towards the bottom. Click that Amazon button. Shop Amazon through UCY.tv. Get the same great prices, same great shipping rate. And at the same time, UCY gets a little kickback to help cover operating costs. Amazon, I tend to be a pretty big Amazon shopper. They have some of the best deals out there, some great shipping rates too. Don't forget also, check out My Patriot Supply. My Patriot Supply, great leading supplier of non-GMO seed vaults. Check them out. Anti-tyrannynews.com/MyPatriot takes you there. Same great price, same great shipping rate, and it helps with our operating costs on this end with our little small kickback from that. Thanks again. Stay tuned here on UCY.tv. Again, great broadcast coming up after this. And don't forget, you can also donate to UCY.tv right at the top. Click that Support UCY tab, and you can donate a certain amount, and that'll help go towards operating costs on the network side of it. Thanks again. Stay tuned here Friday. Take care.